Racist cops arrest black man at airport minutes later. They discover he's the FBI director. The airport terminal buzzed with the chaotic hum of travelers' suitcases rolling, announcements crackling, and hurried footsteps echoing off the polished floors. Amid the crowd, Marcus Ellison stood tall, his tailored suit impeccable, his dark skin gleaming under the fluorescent lights. At 47, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who had climbed impossible ladders. His eyes, sharp and perceptive, scanned the terminal as he adjusted his cufflinks, unaware that he was being watched. Officers Daniels and Harper, two white airport police, stood near a coffee kiosk, their gazes locked on Marcus. To them, he didn't belong. Not here, not in that suit, not with that confident stride. Daniels nudged Harper, his voice low. "Look at him, probably up to something." Harper nodded, his hand resting on his holster. It wasn't the first time they'd singled someone out based on nothing but skin color, and it wouldn't be the last. Or so they thought. Marcus sensed the shift in the air before he saw them. Years of navigating a world that often judged him by his appearance had honed his instincts. As he reached for his boarding pass, the officers approached, their boots heavy on the tile. "Sir, step aside," Daniels barked, his tone laced with accusation. Marcus froze, his jaw tightening. "Is there a problem, officers?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. The crowd parted, eyes turning toward the scene. Harper smirked, mistaking Marcus's composure for defiance. "We need to see some ID. Now." Marcus reached slowly for his wallet, but before he could produce it, Daniels grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. "Don't move!" he shouted, slamming Marcus against a nearby wall. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. A young woman clutched her phone, recording, her hands trembling. "I'm complying," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the pain shooting through his shoulder. "You're making a mistake," Harper scoffed, cuffing Marcus's wrists with unnecessary force. "Yeah, we've heard that before. Save it for the station." The officer's confidence was unshakable, fueled by years of unchallenged prejudice. To them, Marcus was just another suspect, another statistic. As they marched him toward the security office, the crowd grew restless. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to shouts. "Let him go!" A voice called a teenage boy, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face flushed with anger. The officers ignored him, but Marcus caught the boy's eye, offering a faint nod of gratitude. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. Marcus knew what it meant to feel unseen, and he'd spent his life fighting for those who felt the same. Inside the cramped security office, the air was thick with tension. Daniels shoved Marcus into a chair, tossing his wallet onto the desk. "Let's see who you really are," he sneered, flipping it open. His smirk faded as he pulled out a Badhea gold shield emblazoned with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Harper leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "This some kind of fake?" he muttered, but his voice wavered. Marcus leaned back, his gaze piercing. "Check it. Call it in." His tone was calm, almost pitying. Daniels hesitated, then grabbed the radio. Minutes later, the color drained from his face as the dispatcher confirmed the impossible. Marcus Ellison wasn't just an FBI agent, was the director of the FBI, appointed 6 months ago, the first black man to hold the position. The room went silent. Harper's hands shook as he uncuffed Marcus, mumbling apologies that sounded hollow. Daniels stood frozen, his bravado replaced by panic. Marcus rose, rubbing his wrists, his expression unreadable. "You assumed I was a criminal," he said quietly. "Why?" The question hung in the air, sharp and unrelenting. Neither officer could meet his eyes. But the story didn't end there. As Marcus stepped out of the office, he noticed the teenage boy from earlier lingering nearby, his phone still in hand. The boy, Jamal, approached cautiously, his eyes wide with admiration. "I recorded it all," he said, his voice trembling with defiance. "They can't get away with this." Marcus studied him, seeing a spark of courage that reminded him of his younger self. "What's your name, son?" he asked. "Jamal Carter," the boy replied. "I'm studying law. I want to change things." Marcus smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You already are." In that moment, a connection formed a mentor and a future leader, bound by a shared fight for justice. The incident spread like wildfire. Jamal's video went viral, sparking outrage and calls for reform. Daniels and Harper faced suspension, their actions exposed to a nation hungry for accountability. Marcus, however, didn't revel in their downfall. Instead, he used his platform to speak out not just about the incident but about the systemic biases that fueled it. In a press conference, he stood before flashing cameras, his voice steady but passionate. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about every person who's been judged before they've been heard. It's about building a world where no one has to prove their worth to be treated with dignity." The twist came days later, when Marcus received a letter. It was from Daniel's daughter, Emily, a college student who had seen the video. Her words were raw, filled with shame for her father's actions, but also a plea for understanding. "He's not a monster," she wrote. "He's a product of a broken system. Please help him change." Marcus read the letter twice, his heart heavy. He'd spent years fighting for justice, but this was different, a call to Juno for compassion. He wrote back, inviting Emily and her father to meet. The meeting was tense, held in a quiet community center. Daniels, stripped of his uniform, looked small, his eyes red with guilt. Emily sat beside him, her presence a silent plea for redemption. Marcus spoke plainly, his words cutting but kind. "You have a chance to unlearn what you've been taught," he told Daniels. "It's not easy, but it's necessary." By the end, Daniels was in tears, promising to do better not just for himself, but for his daughter. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Months later, Marcus and Jamal stood together at a rally for police reform, their voices united. The crowd roared, not just for Marcus's story, but for the hope it inspired. The airport incident had become a symbol, a painful reminder of how far society still had to go, but also a beacon of what was possible when courage met compassion. The ending wasn't perfect. Racism didn't vanish overnight, and Daniel's journey was just beginning. But Marcus's leadership, Jamal's bravery, and Emily's faith in change planted seeds for a better future. As Marcus looked out at the crowd, he felt a quiet pride not in himself, but in the people ready to carry the fight forward. What do you think? Can justice prevail when prejudice runs deep? Or is change too slow to matter?